So as I was saying, thank you very much for joining. And today we'll talk about metabolism. And one of the things that I hear a lot, that I think a lot of women feel, is that something shifts in the metabolism during perimenopause. And it can feel quite pronounced. It can feel exactly like, I think what I said yesterday. You can just feel like something's changed overnight and for no good reason at all. Just a disclaimer that I'm not a medical doctor for anybody who's new here. This is healthcare or health information, wellness information, but I'm not a medical doctor. If we're talking about anything that has to do with medicines, medical interventions, or diagnostics, then that would need to go through a medical professional. I'd like to start with the check-in. Many of you were here yesterday. I hope the rest of you get to watch the video if you did miss it. I'd like to just get a sense, and you can just put that in the chat, of how are you feeling today? Maybe just put a word of how you're feeling. And what did yesterday bring up for you? Did you kind of reflect on what we shared and discussed? It was great that I had so many questions and feedback. And even today, I've had a number of people reach out and share with me that it's triggered just this sense of, okay, there is possibility, there is information that I need to know. So I'd love to hear from you. Just go ahead and chat, and love to hear how you feel. What did it bring up? And it may bring up positive things, it may bring up negative things. It's all okay, because it's just good to check in with yourself to know, as you're going through the journey of perimenopause, but also the journey of learning anything new, it often triggers something for you. So, perhaps you could just give you a few minutes to write that. So let's talk metabolism. Here is how most women approach weight changes. Just checking that everybody can hear me. All good? Yes. How most women approach weight changes in perimenopause. So this is what I typically see. The first instinct is go to the gym. I've worked with several women, not just one, several women whose first instinct was to sign up to a gym like F45, which is great, but to go twice a day, to go multiple times a day, to literally say, okay, if once a day or 3 times a week is not cutting it, let's just supercharge that process and hope that it works. That's strategy number one that some people use. And if any of you feel that this is what you have tried, just put a note for me to say, yes, that's me, or I completely resonate with that. Or just write the word yes, and that'll tell me, just to get a sense of, you as a community. I'd like this talk to really serve your needs. So feel free to keep asking questions, just resonate with anything that I'm saying. The other approach, which is very, very obvious, is to eat less, just to cut back on food. And for some women, it's massively cutting back on food, so that it's like the tiniest portion. Taking, pills and supplements that promise a kickstart of metabolism or weight loss, are simply not eating. And there is this world of intermittent fasting, and I'm a huge supporter of intermittent fasting if it's done right. But it can also really badly backfire. So this is a strategy that's become really popular. There are merits, but it needs to be done properly. It needs to be done well. The other one, which is food delivery, which is not a bad idea, because it is difficult for people to cook and have everything else going on in their jobs. What I find with food delivery is that it works for a period of time, and then it stops. It just, it gets boring, it gets dull, and then one gets into the old habits of ordering other things online. Obsessing about the number on the scale, just, getting really fixated on that. I had a client who carried her scale with her on holiday. She couldn't let go of the scale. So even on a holiday, she was checking her weight every day. And there is something I'd like to say about that. I think there is, I think weight matters, but I think an obsession about anything is not going to help any part of the body. So this is one that I do see a fair bit. And then one gets frustrated. It's not working, or it's working for a while. So what's typical is a strategy can work for a period of time and then it stops working. And that can be really, really frustrating. And in perimenopause, that happens more than at any other time in your life, because there is so much shift and movement in hormones, as we talked about yesterday. It feels like you're chasing something that's shifting and shaping all the time. And then what typically happens at a certain point is one just binges, one just says, enough, I can't do this anymore, I give up. And there are so many emotions that go with that I think really hurt us. And then this cycle continues. And I think, does this resonate? Have you done any of these as a community? If you can just say, yes, that's me, and maybe just put down what you have done. Has it been the exercising to extreme, the dieting to extreme, the fasting to extreme, the weighing yourself to extreme? Do share with me if that's you. So is there anything wrong with fasting, with taking your weight, with eating less? With exercise? Absolutely not. There's nothing wrong with any of these strategies. It's just how they're performed. Most weight loss techniques don't take into account the complete picture. They are, by definition, a reductionist thinking, which is you have a problem, let's have the solution, and it's going to be the same for everybody. And it doesn't really work like that. So it leads to increased cravings, because if you are a person who is not sleeping well, you're exhausting, highly stressed, and then you start exercising a lot, reduce food a lot, it can just lead to cravings, and pretty massive cravings, rebound binges, frustration, guilt, and the worst of all, which is shame. So the work I do always starts with why. Why is the body doing what it does? The one thing I'd like to share is your body is it's not designed to or interested in working against you. It's actually working to protect you. And many of the instincts of the body are all around survival. And we talked a little bit about the neuroendocrine system, and I'd just like to refresh that because it is so important. So when the body feels like it's under stress or under attack, when it's in this fight-flight zone, it does not want to lose weight because it believes that life is not safe, that survival is at stake. And so it's actually trying to protect you. If, for example, there is inflammation in the body because there are some, issues with what you're eating, there's too much sugar, too much processed food, that inflammation can feel like water retention and bloating. It's not that the body is making you bloated because it enjoys it. It's actually bloating because the immune system believes that there is something to fight and it needs to send its army to do the job. And so always go back to the why. Why is my body doing this? And paying attention to your symptoms, paying attention to what you do and what works is really the way to think about it. So the person who wrote in the chat to say that they exercise and they feel even more tired, that's real. And so when you hear your cousins and your friends talk about how energized they feel after exercise, that's fine for them, but that's not where your body is at. And so I would really want all of you to start with that sense of this is where I'm at, and it may not be the same for everybody. And I'm not going to feel bad about what my body does because it is trying its best and you're trying your best. So the body is responding to messages it receives, internal messages as well as external messages. Internal messages are your thoughts, what your immune system is doing, how your digestion is working, and external messages is everything that we are exposed to from the outside. So external stress, toxins, chemicals, food that isn't great for you. So the body is trying to protect you effectively. So when I say we want to do this with a sense of a bigger picture, we want to not just look at things in a very narrow point of view. So I'll use an example that's here, the thyroid. I have some people saying to me, well, I'm not losing weight, it must be my thyroid, it must be my thyroid, please tell me it's my thyroid, then I can take a pill and we'll all be happy after that. And and you know, many of them come in with blood work from their doctors that show that their thyroid is perfectly fine. Some come in showing that their thyroid is actually not medically off, but not great either. But each of these is a piece of a puzzle when it comes to weight. So I'm going to go through each of these and spend a little bit of time, because I think this is really important. It's really important to know how all of this interplays with each other. So let's start with where I started. And for me, when I work with my clients, I'm really almost always starting with fight-flight dominance, which means if your body is under long-term stress, and that stress can be how you speak to yourself, it can be childhood trauma, it can be just stress of life, overwork, not getting a break, sleeping too late. If your body is in this space, your body will not lose weight till this is resolved. And this can be tough. It can be tough to identify. What I find works well for people is starting by just saying, this is an issue for me. And it also works well to have a community, to have a support system of people who can help you. I don't know if anybody's seen this documentary on Netflix about people who live to 100. And in every community that has longevity and great health, there is community. And so just think about that, whether it's friends, family, people around you, that plays a role. There are many things that play a role, but that does play a role. The second one that I'd like to talk about is sugar ups and downs. So there are people who have severe sugar issues. They can be pre-diabetic or diabetic, but actually the bulk of people I work with have sugar fluctuations that they're not even aware of. So whenever you eat anything with sugar, your sugar levels go up, perfectly normal, and then those levels crash. And the more up and down you do in a typical day, the more your body produces a hormone called insulin. And when you do that, every time you produce insulin, you effectively gain a little bit of weight, get a little bit more inflamed, get a bit more cranky, and get this imbalance that happens. So when I work with my clients, we always start with food, and we always start with what can we do to balance sugar levels, give you really steady sugar through the day. And when you do this, it's not just great from a metabolism point of view, but a reflection of that is your cravings go away pretty much, within days or weeks. Cravings can go away once you get your blood sugar levels into some kind of balance. Let's talk a little bit about the thyroid. The thyroid, as I said, is an organ that its function is often tested through medical doctors. What's interesting is that think of it like this: the thyroid hormones and your stress hormones are like cousins. And so if one is off, if this is off, it does put a level of stress on your thyroid. So I come back to this: the fight-flight response is very, very important. And anybody who's suspecting that their thyroid isn't where it should be needs to look at that. You can't look at the thyroid in isolation. It has to be looked at along with blood sugar, along with fight-flight dominance. The other one is estrogen dominance. And in tomorrow's session, I will be talking a lot more about estrogen dominance, because I'll be covering detoxification. And by detoxification, I don't mean a juice cleanse or a detox in a box kind of a program. I look at how is your body detoxifying. It's a process. I don't even use the word detox for that reason, because it is detoxification that I'm interested in. I'm interested in that entire process. The body is designed to detoxify really well, but we really get in its way with what's in the environment and in our food. And in perimenopause, if this is not balanced, your liver starts feeling a bit sluggish, and that has an impact on metabolism. One of the ways in which it has an impact on the metabolism is that chemicals that are stored in the body, and we all have chemicals stored in the body, they tend to be stored in the fat cells. Now, the body doesn't want to have these chemicals floating about in the bloodstream, because we want to protect our brain and the rest of our organs from these chemicals. So think of fat cells almost like a safe deposit box for these chemicals. And when that happens, the body kind of in its wisdom says, if we are not eating clean, able to detoxify, have all the nutrients we need for detoxification, I'm not touching those chemicals. They're going to stay in those fat cells, and I'm not touching that. So you can eat as little as you want, but that's not going to move. And often people recognize that as cellulite. So estrogen dominance is very important. Linked to your fight-flight dominance are your inner thoughts. This is something I think people are not talking about enough. When we think about stress, we tend to think about what's on the outside, but the conversation you have with yourself about yourself, the guilt, the shame, the critical self-talk, and most of us are very critical. We're more critical towards ourselves than we are to anybody else. Those thoughts are your stressors 24/7, for some people even during sleep. So start paying attention to this. It matters a lot. Sleep matters hugely. I'm obviously focused on nutrition, but I have to say that sleep is really, it's a non-negotiable. Yes, there are days when you don't sleep enough, which is fine. Last night I was working on slides and answering messages. I didn't sleep on time, but most days you want to get your sleep on time. You want to get that 11 p.m. Sleep and then get a solid 8 hours. It's the timing matters, the quality matters. It matters to almost everything. There are studies that show that if you don't sleep well, so think about people who do shift work, they have a higher incidence of diabetes. So, you can see how everything is connected. So when we're talking about metabolism at the nutrition clinic, there is no single diet plan that I give out to everybody. It takes into account all of this. It takes into account gut health. And in today's session, I'll be talking a little bit more about gut health as part of the methodology I use. The gut often feels disconnected from the rest of the body when you're talking about metabolism or hormones. But in every form of medicine, there is this recognition that all health, all illness starts and ends in the gut. So I'll explain more in the next few slides. Lack of joy, lack of pleasure, lack of fun, just overwork, not taking enough time. I think there's a lot of that. I think this was really pronounced during the lockdown for a lot of people, but I think we're still running on that kind of energy, even now. Chemicals are linked to how you detoxify. So what I was talking about earlier, which is linked to estrogen dominance. Deficiencies are very important. If you're not, again, in the wisdom of the body, if it's not getting its nutrients, if you're missing a vitamin, just theoretically, you're missing a vitamin, or you're missing fiber, the body actually kind of has this coding that says, well, we can't live without it. So we're going to make you crave food so that by chance you will get that vitamin in. It's almost like, let's just trigger the system that makes you crave more, just so that you're just taking more food in. So cravings can sometimes be a reflection of deficiencies, particularly B vitamins, particularly magnesium. And last but not least, movement. I like to think of it as movement rather than exercise. Movement is a broader term. Now, how do I view movement in perimenopause? It definitely has to change. It has to take into account this. Really, really important. You cannot jump into an exercise program without really thinking about your nervous system. So in order to put this together, you need a system. If I didn't have a system, what would happen is that I think my clients would end up feeling like they're going to have to work with me forever because there's so much to do. But what as I said earlier, I think what I do really well is take this information, simplify it into a process, and then simplify that into what do you do with that information? Where do you eat? What do you eat? How do you order? Where do you buy your groceries? All of that becomes the practical level of information that I give my clients. So I'd like to just go back. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I've covered some of it today. So when I work with my clients, I always start with the nervous system. So I'm asking questions like, when did you last take a holiday? What was your childhood like? Was there bullying? Do you come from a happy home? Do you have a support system? Do you have happy relationships? What's your sleep like? All of that. So this is that first piece, because the way I see it, this is that switch that goes off and then everything starts falling apart. So you will never, nobody who's ever worked with me would see me and for the first time go on a detox program. There's just no way I would do that, because I think that's really not the right way to do it. I think it could end up being quite, I won't say dangerous, but you can end up with problems like rashes and eczema as a result of it. You can end up with also feeling really, really exhausted if you're not set up to do this. So we always start with, this is like topping up your, topping up the tank. You want to get this sorted out first. This gives you the energy, stops your cravings, gets your sleep in order, gets your mood in order to do this work that's ahead. And the work that's ahead is this. So the second part of our method is the digestive system, the GI system or the digestive system. What's really interesting is that there is a two-way communication channel between the brain and the gut. And science is actually really reinforcing this idea that the brain and the gut are highly interconnected. There is a separate nervous system channel that goes this way and back. And this makes a lot of sense. If your body is under stress, digestion just takes, the body says, you know what, we're going to move our entire resources to sorting out the stress. We're not going to worry about digestion, because quite honestly, if you don't survive through the day, who cares if you're constipated tomorrow, right? So if you're noticing changes in digestion around perimenopause, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you might ask me, what does this have to do with metabolism? To some extent, gut health has to do with everything. The other thing to think about is if whatever your stress load is through emotions and the rest of it, whatever's going on in the gut, if that's not healthy, if that's not balanced, that is one of the big internal stressors. So for example, if you're eating a diet that's very high in chemicals, very high in refined flours that are not right for you, and the digestive system is not happy with that, it's killing your good bacteria, it's creating an overgrowth of certain organisms, you're sort of stress eating, wolfing down food, so you don't have the digestive enzymes, you're not breaking down your food, you're not getting your nutrients in, well, that's really stressful for the body, and that stress is going to affect metabolism. So we don't, as I said earlier, we need to have that bigger picture in mind, because when you're thinking about, well, what do I do because I've gained weight? Well, we have to look at this. We can't not look at this. We have to take this into account, because this could be the thing that really shifts the needle for you. So this whole stress-gut connection affects your hormones, mood, anxiety, weight, energy, cravings, sleep, and it impacts your tendency towards allergies, obviously your digestion, skin health, anything that's happening in the skin. So if somebody comes to me with acne, eczema, hives, I think about the gut first. Inflammation, autoimmunity, sensitivities, and deficiencies. So there's a lot that is captured through this stress gut axis that we all we all have to really think about. So just to show you and simplify some of this so that I can make it just more real and practical for you. How does it work? When somebody works with me, what are we doing? Kind of how are we doing it step by step? So the first step is always food, always balancing blood sugar. That's got to be the first step. And I use a certain food philosophy around this that gets to the results really quickly. It works for vegetarians. It almost works for, if you're willing to do some of the work. It doesn't work for people who are, addicted to pizza and Coke, but if you're willing to do the work, this works really well. So, we see that resolves really quickly. Once you get the right ingredients on the plate, and I like to work with what a person likes to eat. So we want to work with the food you enjoy and rearrange what's on the plate in order to get better blood sugar balance. That's kind of the starting step. Then we move to the second step, which is to reduce inflammation. Inflammation is at the root of so many health issues. It's also at the root of that bloating or water retention sort of feeling. And we find that just doing that, bringing in certain foods, avoiding certain foods can reduce inflammation really well. And then the third step is to heal the gut lining. And that's all about giving the digestive system what it needs to feed this flora. We carry 20 to 30 trillion organisms in the gut, and feeding them well and pushing out the organisms that we don't need is very important. I like to think of the gut like a garden. And so if you take the garden analogy, balancing the blood sugar and reducing inflammation is like strengthening and nourishing the soil. This is about having such a healthy soil that you can grow flowers very easily, and making sure that the weeds don't have room to grow. And the last step, which I'll be getting into more detail around detoxification and this concept called autophagy tomorrow. This last step is really about just making sure, sorry about that, just making sure that things that need to clear out and go, into the river is going, and what needs to stay stays. So this is how we build. We don't jump to any of these without getting that foundation strong. So when it comes to how to balance hormones, we want to have the interplay of these three areas. And in my experience, once you get these areas in balance, the body just has its own wisdom. It figures a lot of these things out. It's almost like you give the body what it needs and you take away what it really doesn't want. And it responds in the same way that it can respond to protect you in a way that doesn't feel comfortable. It can also respond to protect you in a way that feels very comfortable. This is the system I use. So, the foundation is around food, sleep and stress, blood sugar and energy. That's got to be the first level of work we do. Then we look at what's happening in the gut. We repair the gut. We get the flora right. We detoxify. And interestingly, metabolism sits here. And the reason is this: if you go on a short, strict food plan, that might be upsetting to your nervous system, upsetting to your gut, upsetting even to your blood sugar and energy. You might lose a couple of kilos, but it'll rebound. That's not going to stick. Doing this kind of work helps it stick. And doing this kind of work also helps you understand. It's like primary education in your body. You need to understand what makes things shift for you. Hormonal balance and what everybody wants, which is long-term resilience. So let me ask you this: if you could reduce your symptoms and ride these changes with empowerment rather than fear, and I hope you feel that that's now a little bit more reachable. It's not elusive. It's not something that you thought was not possible. Would you want to take action? And just if you could write yes in the chat, or no, and why. I'm happy to hear your feedback. I'd love to know how you're feeling and how all of this is sitting with you. Thank you. This is great. So I'm putting together my first group program around perimenopause. I've been working with clients one-on-one for 15 years now, almost 15 years. And I've wanted to take this work and this knowledge and this process to a larger community, a community that also rests on community. One of the things I do find when I'm working one-on-one is it's wonderful. It's a wonderful process. But whenever I've done workshops and talks, I think one of the things that I feel my audience has enjoyed is this sense of, I'm not doing this alone. And in fact, somebody reached out to us today and said that, it's really nice to know that other women are also going through this. I'm not dealing with this in isolation. So this is the Perimenopause Blueprint. It is a way for you to discover the method that I've just shared with you. The focus is on metabolism, energy, bloating. For me, it's really important that it's done in a community, because I think we all learn from each other. And I think in this phase, especially, I think having that community is very important. Here are some details. So it is a 6-week program that launches on the 2nd of November. So that's a Thursday. I wanted to do this differently from many of the training programs that I have purchased, a number of my friends and family have purchased. I do find that there are lots of courses online that look really amazing, but if you're already exhausted and overwhelmed, the last thing you need to do is to find a slot to go online and watch a recording. For most people, that doesn't happen. And so most people buy programs and courses and just don't make it to the videos. And so that didn't feel fair to me. That's not the way I'd like to run this. So I will be there live every week on a Thursday for 6 weeks. There's a curriculum that we will follow together, but it will be really personalized. So it's taking the way I work one-on-one and making it available one-to-many. So obviously you'll get recordings, but I'll be there every week. We'll go through an area of work. There'll be things for you to do. We'll check your symptoms. There'll be the availability for you to ask me questions. So you'll get a food plan. You'll get instant, I want you to feel that instant shift with practical adjustments. I'll be able to give you food plans, recipes, eating out guides so that you have all the support you need. You'll have access to me for Q&A. And as I said, we'll have a weekly monitoring of your progress so that we know that you're all on track. Now, I am offering this to this community, all of you who've reached out to me, who've followed me on social media, who've turned up for these sessions at a discounted rate. So the regular price for this is $997. It's all in Singapore dollars, $997. There is a promo, and if you book before midnight tomorrow and use this code, just make a note of this code. It is case sensitive, so it has to be 247 off all caps. If you book before midnight tomorrow, you'll get it for $750. We kickstart on the 2nd of November. And just to let you know, at this price, this is almost a quarter of what you'd be paying if you worked with me one-on-one with the extra time and support that I would be adding to this. So this is a really well-priced, and I think price matters. I think I want this available. I don't want that to be the reason you don't get the help you need. So I want to make this available to the women who are really motivated to make changes, who want to go through this experience with me, who've liked what I've said, who want a system, who want that simplicity, and who really want to end the year not having to guess what's right for them. I want you all to enter 2024 dancing, into the year without the aches and pains and the rest of it. So one of the things that I will be adding into this, I'm very aware of where we are in the year, and I wanted to do this just before the holidays. For some people, there will be some holidays along the way, because I think that's real life. And if you get support through that process, literally on a weekly basis, it can be very different to trying to do it on your own. So in some ways, this is the best time of the year to do it. You will end the year right. You don't have to join that January crowd of resolutions if you get this right in these 6 weeks. Here's a QR code, and that'll take you straight to a booking page. And just a little bit more about what it teaches you. So as I said, we're going to help you eat to crush cravings. We're going to focus a lot on bloating. We're going to focus a lot on sleep. We're going to look at some of the perimenopausal symptoms, and I'll be explaining to you what those symptoms are all about. So for example, tomorrow I will talk about hot flashes more and how they're linked to how you detoxify and what you can do about that. So we'll be looking at these symptoms. Energy, absolutely. Caffeine-free energy techniques, there's nothing wrong with some caffeine, but I don't like it when you have to have a cup of coffee to function in the day. I think it's perfectly fine to enjoy a cup of coffee, but not to need it at that level. And obviously what we're talking about today, which is metabolism repair. For a lot of people who have tried some of the very strict strategies, the yo-yo diets, the extreme exercise, the metabolism almost feels like it's damaged. And so we want to repair that by going back to basics and really looking at when that started happening. Tomorrow, I'd love to see all of you tomorrow. We will be putting the whole 3 blocks together. So we've covered this today, and I will talk about detoxification tomorrow and how that is linked to perimenopause, and it's actually very, very important in perimenopause. So do join us tomorrow for that. And of course, there is time for questions today. I will leave a little extra time for questions tomorrow, so that if you've gone through the material, you're interested in the program, but you want to ask some questions, I'll be available. You can also book a time slot to speak to me if you would like that. And I'll just bring this back here. So if anybody wants to make a note of the code or the QR code, it's all over here for you. With that, I am very much open to answering any questions you have, and let me know how I can help you. You can go ahead and do that in the meeting chat. If anybody would like to speak, then I can unmute. We can unmute you. Looking at some of the questions, somebody's commented on sleep being elusive at this stage, which is very true. Bloating, yes, we'll be definitely focusing on that. Yes, this is my first group session or group program that I'll be conducting. And yeah, if you have any questions about that, I'll be definitely happy to answer them. I've got a question about why does cholesterol go up in perimenopause? Estrogen, which is one of the hormones that goes down in perimenopause, does protect women from high blood sugar and high blood cholesterol. So our risk factors become where we tend to have a lower heart disease risk factor as long as we're having our period. When we are in menopause, our risk factor for heart disease is the same as men. Thank you for the question about postmenopause. I'm definitely taking that into account, and I will be looking to run some talks on postmenopause. I recognize the need, and I recognize that some of this feels like what you've gone through, so absolutely. I've got a question about how would the individual questions be addressed in a group setting for the program. That's a fantastic question. So the way we would do it is everybody would fill up their symptoms. I would get the information. I'll be going through everybody's symptom questionnaire in detail, the way I do for my one-on-one. You're really getting the benefit of one-on-one, but with a group setting. Then when we meet, I'll be putting everybody on like a foundational plan. There will be an every week session. About half of the time will be given to sharing content, and half of the time will be available for questions and answers. There will also be the ability for you to send me questions just directly through, and it's anonymous. You can send me questions just to me. And for people who want a little bit more, you know, if they want more kind of attention during that during one of those weekly sessions, you would be able to submit a form to apply for a hot seat. So, for example, if you're struggling with something, you want to just spend more time discussing that. Every week there'll be a slot or two for hot seats, so you will just get on. The focus will be on you for a period of time, and so that will, and honestly, that helps everybody, because I really do feel this. There is so much information here. There is so much to do. And we learn from each other. I learn from my clients. There are certain foods my clients find. There are, restaurants. And so I really hope that the people who join this really do enjoy that sense of learning from each other. So the idea, I've got a few questions about food plans. How long will we see results? So it does depend on what you're looking for sure, but I tend to see certain results in terms of just well-being, energy, cravings. For some people, it's days. Definitely for some people, it's in the first 1 or 2 weeks. The body can actually respond really quickly if you give it the right things. And I have a question on, will we always be following a food plan? And no, you don't always need to be following a food plan. We will do a wrap-up session right at the end, and I will then discuss with you, how do you take the learnings from what you have done and apply them to long-term. So the analogy I use with my clients is, think of it like a bank balance. You're not always spending and you're not always saving as well. If you have that balance, of spending and saving, you generally, it works out, right? So there will be times when you will be spending because there will be travel or holidays, and you will want to not be on a food plan, and that's perfectly fine as long as you have enough savings. And the 6 weeks is a way of really topping up those savings so that you have those resources, you have that knowledge, you feel better, but you also have built up a level of resource that your body can lean on. I've got a question about how is this different from my signature hormone program? So I do run a 6-month signature hormone program. My 6-month programs or my 4-month programs, which is another one that I run, are different. I see my clients there once a month, so it's I give of course food advice and support. My signature programs include tests, so they include tests on food sensitivities, what deficiencies do you have, what's going on with the gut. Now, the tests are great. I think they work really well, and they give me really incredible information. What I have found, though, is that there is a community of people who feel like I don't necessarily need that, or maybe I'm not ready for it right now. It could be a decision around time, it could be a decision around money, or it could just be a level of interest. So the group that will meet in the group program, everybody will be in perimenopause. Everybody will go through these blocks of practical strategies that we do. The 6-month program becomes really handy where there is something that's a bit of a question mark. I'm kind of doing everything right, and yet something's not working. Or a person who just needs additional help, or who wants that one-on-one. So the focus, obviously, in the one-on-one in the signature programs is completely on the individual. And that's obviously priced very differently to this. The weekly sessions are an hour, 7 to 8 the same time. Somebody's postmenopausal, absolutely, you can still go for the program. Not a problem at all. What if you can't change your job and that's your stress level? Then we look at what stresses you can change, because there will be certain demands on your body, but then you don't want your food and your sugar ups and downs and your gut to be adding to your stress. I've got a question about the one-to-one session. So I charge $280 for my one-to-one sessions. $280 is the first appointment. $280 is also the second appointment, where I typically run, if I run tests, then I go through that in the second appointment, and then all follow-ups are $200. All right, if there are any more questions, I can take a couple more questions. If not, I'm happy to wrap up. And just remember to take the details down if you'd like to make the most of this offer. And just remember that the offer does run out by midnight tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.